Once upon a time, in a valley surrounded by towering peaks, lived a young girl named Amira. Her heart soared with the eagles, and her spirit danced with the mountain winds, for she loved the mountains more than anything. Now, in this valley, there was no greater peak than the one called Tomorrow's Long Story. Its summit was veiled in mist and legend, and it was said to hold a secret view that could change the way one saw life itself. This secret view became Amira's obsession, and she yearned to see it with her own eyes. One day, Amira approached the village elders and asked them for advice on how to reach the top of Tomorrow's Long Story. The elders, wise and weathered like the mountains themselves, shook their heads sadly. "Child," said the chief elder, his voice as creaky as the old oak tree, "no one climbs Tomorrow's Long Story. It is a mountain that does not yield easily. Many have tried, and none have succeeded. To climb it is folly, and to dream of reaching its top." And it grew with the resilience of a mountain flower. She refused to let go of her dream. So she started to train. Day in and day out, she would wake up before the sun kissed the mountain tops and start her training. First, she would scale the smaller hills around her village, getting higher and higher until even the smallest pebble seemed like a mountain to her. Then she would study the travelers passing through the village, learning their stories and gathering information about the trails and paths leading to Tomorrow's Long Story. She learned about the mountain's moods, its hidden caves, and its most treacherous paths. Years went by, and soon Amira's name became synonymous with courage and determination. People would point to her and say, "There goes the girl who is going to climb Tomorrow's Long Story." And though some said it with admiration, many mocked her dream. Finally, the day arrived when Amira felt ready. She was no longer the carefree girl who first dreamed of the summit. The mountain had become her whole world. She had studied its every move, its every breath. She had tamed her fears and turned them into strength. One early morning, bidding farewell to the village and ignoring the jeers of the people, Amira set out on her journey. With every step, her determination grew. As she walked, she would touch the rough bark of trees and feel the soft moss beneath her feet. She would listen to the gurgling of the streams and watch the hawks circling high above. All these were her companions. After many days of walking, she reached the foothills of Tomorrow's Long Story. Here, the air grew colder and the wind began to bite like a wild animal. But Amira was ready. She put on her warmest coat, tied her hood against the wind, and started to climb. The lower slopes were covered in thick, soft snow, which crunched under her boots. The silence was profound, broken only by the sound of her own breathing. As the day wore on, the snow began to fall, swirling around her in a white cloud. The wind picked up, and suddenly a storm was upon her. Amira pressed on, battling the elements. Lightning cracked, thunder roared, and the wind screamed in her ears, trying to push her back down. But she clung to the mountainside, refusing to surrender to the fury of the storm. Days turned into nights, and still she climbed. The storm never stopped. The mountain tested her with bitter cold and howling winds, trying to break her spirit, but Amira held on. She moved from one ledge to another, her fingers numb, her body aching. Often she wanted to give up. Thoughts of warm beds and cozy hearths flashed before her eyes. The voices of the villagers echoed in her ears, saying she should turn back. But then she would look up and see the faint line where sky met mountaintop, and she would whisper, "Tomorrow's peak is not for those who quit today." And with that thought, she pushed on. At last, the storm began to subside. The wind, though still sharp, was kinder. The snow, though still heavy, was softer. And as the clouds parted, a sliver of sunlight touched her face. Miraculously, her supplies were not lost in the storm. Her water had not frozen. Her food was still dry. And with a surge of hope, she continued her climb. When the sun returned, Amira emerged from the clouds onto a world transformed. The mountain peaks around her were now sharp and clear, each one a silent sentinel guarding the secrets of the heights. The clouds had vanished, and below her, the valley was a sea of white. Everywhere she looked, there was beauty, a beauty so serene and pure it took her breath away. But her joy was short-lived, for as the sun climbed higher, the heat began to bite, melting the snow and turning the mountain into a rushing river of ice and rock. The danger of an avalanche loomed over her. Now she had to hurry, not just to reach the top, but to escape the mountain's fury. As the day wore on, Amira scrambled over boulders, slipped on patches of ice, and crossed bridges of snow. Each step was a challenge, each bend a test of her endurance. Just when her hope was fading, she saw it, a small cave hidden between two rocks. The entrance was narrow, but inside, sheltered from the sun, was a small pool of water that hadn't melted yet. Kneeling beside the pool, she drank deeply. The water was icy, but it revived her, giving her the strength to go on. She spent the night in the cave, huddled for warmth against a rock, watching the stars wheel and shift in the vast darkness above. In the morning, the path ahead was clear, and the weather was fine. The final stretch was easier, but the altitude was making her head spin. But pushing through the haze, she saw it, the summit of tomorrow's long story. With a last burst of energy, she climbed the final rocks and stepped onto the top. There, spread out before her, was a sight that brought tears to her eyes. Valleys and rivers Fields and forests, towns and villages, all lay bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. Beyond the horizon, the sky was painted in hues of orange, purple, and pink. It was as if the world itself was ending in a glorious sunset just for her. In that moment, standing on the highest point she had ever dared to dream of, Amira realized that the view wasn't what she had climbed for. The mountain had given her more than a view. It had given her strength, courage, and wisdom. The climb had changed her. She had faced her fears and conquered them. She had endured the harshest elements and survived. In doing so, she had found herself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Amira started her descent. When she reached the village, people gathered around her, their faces a mixture of awe and disbelief. "You did it," they whispered. "You climbed tomorrow's long story." But Amira knew that she had climbed not just the mountain, she had climbed a part of herself she never knew existed. From that day on, Amira's story became a legend in the village, a reminder that the greatest summits are not always in the mountains, but within ourselves. And so, my dear listeners, remember, the greatest treasures are not always where we expect them to be. Sometimes they are hidden within the journey itself. The climb may be hard, the path uncertain, but the view from the top is worth every struggle. For it is not just about reaching the destination, it's about what we become along the way. If you believe in yourself and never give up, then the summit of your life, whatever they may be, are within your reach. And remember, the view from the top is only for those who dare to climb. Thank you for listening.